Hello, students. Dr. Dia here with you again. And for this week's philosophy appetizer, we're going to talk about an interesting topic, chaos. As I record this talk, we are in the year 2020, a year that has been marked by worldwide chaos due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It seems like all of our lives have been turned upside down. Business, education, finances, even family and relations and the activities that we can participate in have all been transformed. And so, because of that, I've entitled this talk, Embracing Chaos. What happens when things in our lives don't go the way we want them to go? Do we fear chaos? Do we run away from it? Do we ignore it and hope that it'll just go away and things will come back to normal? Well, it's interesting, but it turns out that chaos is a very important component of our universe. And it is related to a property we're going to study in class that is called entropy. Let's look at this story.
Late in January 1975, a 17-year-old German girl called Vera Brandes walked out onto the stage of the Cologne Opera House. The auditorium was empty. It was lit only by the dim green glow of the emergency exit sign. This was the most exciting day of Vera's life. She was the youngest concert promoter in Germany, and she had persuaded the Cologne Opera House to host a late-night concert of jazz from the American musician Keith Jarrett. 1,400 people were coming, and in just a few hours, Jarrett would walk out on the same stage, he'd sit down at the piano, and without rehearsal or sheet music, he'd begin to play. But right now, Vera was introducing Keith to the piano in question, and it wasn't going well. So Jarrett looked to the instrument a little warily, played a few notes, walked around it, played a few more notes, muttered something to his producer, and the producer came over to Vera and said, "You don't get a new piano. Keith can't play." There'd been a mistake. The opera house had provided the wrong instrument. This one had this harsh, tinny upper register because all the felt had worn away. The black notes were sticking, the white notes were out of tune, the pedals didn't work, and the piano itself was just too small. It wouldn't create the volume that would fill a large space such as the Cologne Opera House. So Keith Jarrett left. He went and sat outside in his car, leaving Vera Brandes to get on the phone to try to find a replacement piano. Now, she got a piano tuner, but she couldn't get a new piano. And so she went outside, and she stood there in the rain, talking to Keith Jarrett, begging him not to cancel the concert. And he looked out of his car at this bedraggled, rain-drenched German teenager, took pity on her, and said, "Never forget. Only for you." And so a few hours later, Jarrett did indeed step out onto the stage of the opera house. He sat down at the unplayable piano and began. Clear that something magical was happening. Jarrett was avoiding those upper registers. He was sticking to the middle tones of the keyboard, which gave the piece a soothing, ambient quality. But also, because the piano was so quiet, he had to set up these rumbling, repetitive riffs in the bass. And he stood up, twisting, pounding down on the keys, desperately trying to create enough volume to reach the people in the back row. It's an electrifying performance. It somehow has this peaceful quality, and at the same time it's full of energy. It's dynamic. And the audience loved it. Audiences continue to love it because the recording of the Cologne concert is the best-selling piano album in history and the best-selling solo jazz album in history. Keith Jarrett had been handed a mess. He'd embraced that mess and it soared. But let's think for a moment about Jarrett's initial instinct. He didn't want to play. Of course, I think any of us in any remotely similar situation would feel the same way. We'd have the same instinct. We don't want to be asked to do good work with bad tools. We don't want to have to overcome unnecessary hurdles. But Jarrett's instinct was wrong. Thank goodness he changed his mind. And I think our instinct is also wrong. I think we need to gain a bit more appreciation for the unexpected advantages of having to cope with a little mess.
It's a fascinating story, isn't it? And as the speaker was saying, we may have to change our mindset about the role of chaotic circumstances in our lives. Seems to me like there are three heroes in this story. Of course, the teenager Vera, her persistence, her perseverance, trying to convince Keith Jarrett while standing there in the rain to go ahead and perform the concert. That is commendable. I think the genius of Keith Jarrett to go up there and transform an otherwise chaotic situation into a masterpiece that is part of his legacy as a musician. But thirdly, there is this element of chaos itself. And perhaps, as we will see in our lessons on the topic of entropy, it has a very important role in how we deal with our lives. So I'm going to invite you today to not fear, to not try to run away from, but to embrace chaos as a transforming force in our lives. Thank you.